Before we get going with our panelists, just a reminder for our attendees, if you have questions, please leave them in the chat and we'll get to them afterwards. So let's start this panel on the effective uses of unopposed versus opposed practice. Ignacio, you think they both benefit the development of players no matter what their age is?
Well, in my opinion, when we are talking about different kind of tasks during the training sessions, we have to be focused on the objective we want to achieve. So if we talk about opposed or unopposed exercises, I think that both can work if we are able to achieve the goal we want. So sometimes we criticize some of these unopposed exercises, but probably it's necessary for the football player to assimilate some concepts we want to transmit, or maybe to have a good relation with the other players of the team. And sometimes if we start with a difficult context, that could probably be worse than if we do an unopposed exercise and they can assimilate these concepts, and then we're going to develop the task with opposition or with different rules that makes this more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about you, Pedro? Do you need them both in your training sessions? What makes you use one method or the other, that being the case?
As Ignacio mentioned, they all have their space. And if we set the right rules and targets, we can achieve the objectives we set for the session. However, myself personally, I like opposition. I think the drills should have as much as possible direction, opposition, and a specific structure of the players according to the position they will play or the position we are coaching them. However, there is time and space for everything. If we want to create a drill to work generic principles of the game, we can also do unopposed session to explain certain details in a simple and less complex context, but as much as possible I use oppose with opposition, and sometimes we manipulate. Doesn't need to be 6v6, could be 6v4 to build some advantage for the team on the ball or something like that. We can manipulate that, but give a bit of opposition, in my opinion, is very important to increase the decision-making process of the players and the team as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. At grassroots level, Iain, is it better for youth players to deal with pressure and give them opposed football drills, or is it better off for their development to practice in a more relaxed way and gain confidence by giving them unopposed roundos, for instance?
I think, as the other two guys have said, I think there's room for both, in whether it's grassroots or whether it's a professional game. I think it's all based around the needs of your players, coupled with the outcomes that you want from the practice. So from an unopposed situation, if you want to, what we call, groove the technique, so if you want to just repetition of a particular technique, whatever that technique is, it's much easier to break it down. You get more success from that without opposition. If you want to increase decision making within the practice, so you want to improve your players' decision making in certain situations, the when and the where, then you'd add opposition, or you would add some way of players having to make their own decisions, whether that be opposition or whether that be led by the coach.
Mm-hmm. Where do they stand, the youth players, in that? What's their opinion as far as their experience is concerned? Do they prefer unopposed or? I think it depends on the situation, but me as a coach, me as a player, I would always prefer opposition because of that decision making and the realism within the practice. So the
obviously the more decisions there are to make within the practice, the closer you are to the game. The less decisions you need to make within the practice, the further away you are from the game. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I think there's that competition element that might be lost within an unopposed practice that would be there in an opposed practice. So I think from a playing point of view, and also from a coach's point of view, as Pedro alluded to, I think, as he said, both directional and opposed, whether it be underloads, overloads, are probably the preferred option, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But there's room for both.
Obviously, yeah. Okay, so about rondos. First, I would ask Ignacio to clarify our audience on the differences between positional play and possession, and what is the main purpose of them when we work.
Or the positional play and possession. Well, I think that let me say that first of all, even if independently the exercise or the task we want to do on our training session, I think that the key, as I told you, is that we achieve the objective we want, but we cannot be discontextualized of the competition. So we need to be in the real environment or in the real context that our players are going to face on every match. So particularly and personally, I think that it's a, how do you say, it's a richer task when you have an opposition and you have the different kind of elements or aspects we are going to face in the competition, because it's the most real aspects that we can train with. And if I have to ask you this question about the positional games, I think that it depends on the age of the players, the concepts we want to explain. But for sure, I think that this is one of the most important part of the game. A game that is football, which is very, very difficult to take under control many things. And when we talk about a positional game, I'm not a coach that I don't think any task is bad if we achieve an objective for this player, for this team, for this context, for this category. So we have to be open-minded to different kind of for the work of different kind of coaches. Of course, a positional game, I think, could be interesting if we are in the real context for these players, for this team, and of course for this age.
About possession, Pedro, there's a famous quote from Domenech Torrent, former Flamengo coach and Guardiola assistant. He said that it's a game of position, not possession. Meaning the goal is not to move the ball, but the opponent. Do you agree?
I agree with that. I think any possession game, the final goal is to move the opposition team away from their goal in order to put the ball there. So all position games should aim that objective. So according to that, again, I will emphasize how important it is to me to have a direction on a drill, even if it's a possession, in my opinion. And I'd say all the time I'll do this way, but 90% of the time on a possession, the players, to me, they need to have something where something they have to defend and something they have to attack, either be small goals or end zone, or achieve a certain area of the pitch, or certain supporting players just playing outside some square, in order to put the players who make that final pass or shoot on goal be more involved on that situations, and the players who used to defend be playing according to that situation on a pitch. So if the main goal is on a possession game is find ways as in a collective way to move the ball, to make sure we put to move the opposition team to find specific spaces to attack the goal. So we need to give a direction on the drill. So a possession by itself, as is on space, but is not as rich for the training session in my opinion, as a one with the direction and specific targets.
Mm-hmm. Do you think?
Go on, sorry.
Yeah. No, you could please finish.
So I was gonna say, so it's very important to me, give a direction to the drill, so the players can have a plan on their head and not just passing the ball around with no purpose, specific purpose. We need to create a purpose on the drill. That's the main thing for me. Okay.
Did you feel that, Pedro, still about this subject, did you feel that when we had Guardiola era in Barcelona and even in Manchester City, did you feel that that possession without purpose or with purpose, that dilemma and the tiki-taka with Spain, did you feel that the players somehow changed mentally and started to give more attention to the possession without that purpose of attacking, just to keep the ball away from the other team?
Well, what I do believe is Barcelona players, Bayern Munich or City players, they're not just passing the ball for the sake of it. They're passing the ball to unbalance the opposition team. Even in a couple of weeks ago, we could see, to me, the players and the team need to understand where is the space, and where we cannot find the space, how can we create the space? So even a couple of weeks ago, I watched the game against Tottenham where Ederson, the goalkeeper, they were pressing, Tottenham were pressing high, and he recognized the space was behind the back four of the Tottenham players, and he played a long ball. So the main objective is to achieve the opposition goal. To me, if we can make 10 passes, if we have to make 10, 20 passes to achieve that, that's okay, that's fine. It's more enjoyable for me as a coach, for the players, for the fans. But if they are pressing me high, if they have 3 or 4 players on my at the edge of the box giving high pressing to my team, and I have a lot of space in behind, and I have quick and fast players in behind, why should I play a long ball? Yeah. So I'm not a romantic in that way. I think the players need to understand what they have in front of them to make the best decision for the team. If we can play out the back all the time, I would love to, but not always you can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Iain, being positional drills a style in where the football pitch is divided into zones with different tasks attached, and with the rotations associated with these drills, players learn different behaviors on the pitch. As far as the grassroots football is concerned, is this important in that old dilemma of learning one position versus many positions?
It's a tool that can be used to block off the pitch and to tie players into specific areas to learn to play that position or those positions on the pitch. I think it's also can be used to highlight a certain strategy for specific positions, or a development strategy maybe. So you could actually, if you've got a player that you want to develop to work more efficiently in tight areas, a midfield player, for example, you might block them off into a mid area of a whatever size pitch you're using, a small-sided game, and you might play them matched within that area. So that they have lots of contacts with the ball in a tight situation. So you're improving their being able to play in that position in a tight situation. If you might put them in overloads or underloaded situations depending on what the outcome you wanted for that player was. So if it's working from an individual development point of view, you could also use those kind of practices, blocking off thirds, or for team unit work. So yeah, it can be used for all sorts. But just to echo what Pedro was saying there about possession over position. I think it's possession for a purpose, as we've said. If we could go from front to back and score every time, we would, because you can't get away from the fact that the game is about scoring goals, whether it's development or whether it's winning games of football or developing individuals. It's about, you can't get away from the fact that it's about scoring goals. So if we could go from front to back quickly every time, we would. The reason why we can't is because of the opposition won't let you. So you obviously need to keep possession of the ball to move the opposition about, to get the opportunity to penetrate the opposition.
Specifically about the players and their capability of playing many positions, have you noticed some changes throughout the years in terms of what they want for their careers? Are they open for playing many positions, or are they fixed with Cristiano Ronaldo's thing and being a striker and the star of the company?
Yeah. Everybody wants to be Cristiano Ronaldo, but Cristiano Ronaldo could play centre back and he'd still be one of the best players in the world. He's got that much ability. I think it has changed slightly over the years. I think the mentality of coaches has changed, in that they're about not locking players into positions or labelling players in a specific position at too younger age. So the rotation of players within a system at a young age, I think is beneficial to the players' development. So they learn to play in different areas of the pitch, and then maybe specialise a bit later on in their career, depending on what level they play at.
Okay. Ignacio, there are obvious differences in the build-up of these positional games and also the possession drills, but are there any main rules that you follow in both cases in terms of structure in the organization of the drills, like tactical disposition, number of touches, for instance?
Yeah, I think that this kind of rules could approach us to our game model, or the different kind of the phases of the game, the objectives we want to achieve. I agree with both Pedro and Iain, because I think that sometimes we can make a rich task if we take into consideration these small rules. For example, the number of touches, the spaces they can play in or not, how they could move if we have the ball or if we don't have the ball, the position of the ball. And I think that if we try to contextualize these different behaviors of the players and the functions and roles the players are going to do in these positional games, or more in the positional games than just in positions, I think that the task and the training is going to have a higher level, in my opinion. So I think that both could be interesting if we know where we are, but depending on the coaches. So the coaches, we have the opportunity to create richer tasks during the training sessions, and these kind of rules obviously could help our team to achieve different goals.
Mm-hmm. For you as a under 15 coach, it must be a challenge to balance the complexity of those tasks with young players.
Yes, when we have a good level of our players, we try to train with them in different situations they're going to face in the competition, and this is related with decision making, with how to solve a 1-versus-1, how to press or not, which space we are going to attack, what happens when we lose the ball. These different rules we are going to introduce these rules during the task, but we are not to to be focused only in do this. Like we are not playing PlayStations, and we are not going to move our players in the pitch like if we play chess. But I think it's interesting to give them some tools to provoke what we want for our team and what they are going to face in the competition.
Okay. Pedro, about small-sided games, how do you usually set up your drills? What's your preferences?
I usually use small-sided games with football conditioning purpose. But even in those situations, I try to create some micro objectives according to the principles we want to set. The way we pick the players as a reason behind it. So if I'll do, for instance, a 4v4, I'll use one team with 2 center backs and 2 midfielders, center mids, against maybe 2 center forwards playing against 2 center mids. So to create a relationship between the players that used to play close to each other on the pitch, and create boundaries, understanding where I'm the stronger and where I have my weaker points, so we can know each other. And even if I do, like I was mentioning, a 4v4 with keepers, goals, and then we can set rules with, if I want to play out the back, one of the rules will be the keeper always play with the players out of the back, not long balls up above their heads. So little things like that can be put in place, but I usually use that as a fitness, a specific fitness, so football conditioning, playing football. So for them to be fit, playing football, making decisions becomes more specific. That's the way I see small-sided games, but I'll never do that. I'm not going to say I'll never, but 90% of the times, again, we always set that as a club and my coaching staff, we set that with specific reasons, with a specific order for us to, will not work our tactical shape as an all. I don't have 10 players there playing, but I'll work the micro principles of my vision of the way we want to play. So I'll set a group of players playing together to play against, so my center backs to play against center forwards, and midfielders will play against midfielders. So we try to create those guidelines and rules to build our model of play, our system, our model of game, even on a small-sided game. But when I use them, my vision is to build their fitness.
Okay, so you applied that micro principles and that vision also to the, obviously, the phases of play.
Say again, sorry?
You apply also that philosophy, those micro principles, when you set up the phases of play.
Yes, but then when we do the phase of play, my eyes will go more towards the tactical side of the game, the way I want to. So my coaching. So for instance, if I'll do a small-sided game, the main feedbacks I'll provide to the players will be more a quantitative one. Come on, guys, keep going, push hard, work rate, pace on the game, things like that. And then when we stop, we give a little feedbacks according to, listen, the way you have to use your body, you have to orientate your body this way or that way. On that situation, perhaps you shouldn't drop or press. When I'll do face-off play, my vision goes more towards the tactical side. Teach the players the game, the way we want to play, and teach more specifically that face-off play we picked for the session.
Okay.
But let me mention one thing is, even coaching and teaching a certain face-off play, in my opinion, we have to drive our players and our team to try to perform that at the same work rate we want to see on a real match. Because if you work because if you coach a face-off play with a very, very low tempo,
that's what I was meaning.
that will not gonna apply on a real match.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Iain, how important are these small-sided games to stimulate the players as a tool of learning since grassroots beginners?
Yeah, I think you can use small-sided games, again, depending on which outcome you want. So if you say it could be a technical outcome, as I spoke about earlier, where you're actually concentrating maybe on one player who perhaps needs some technical work, so you might lock them into a certain area within the small-sided game, or you could use it for working with units, as Pedro's alluded to there, of working with centre backs against strikers. You could look at it as far as the social, for some social outcomes, in that just play it for fun. So small-sided games is a fun game. Everybody loves to play small-sided games. Goalkeepers love playing out in small-sided games. They like a bit of fun. So it could be to increase camaraderie within the team, within the squad. So they can be used for that. They can use, as Pedro said as well there, about physical. So a high tempo, maybe block them into 4 minute blocks, so that they're working really, really hard for 4 minutes, break, then back in for 4 minutes, and monitoring their fitness. So it can be used for that as well. So small-sided games are a fantastic tool to use for those kind of things. I think generally they might be used as more to improve or develop principles within the team. So principles as far as attacking the principles, penetration, creation space, support, creativity, or defending, compactness, depth, delay, and deny. So they might be more of a principle, rather than when you go into the phase of play, you're looking at more specific positional play linked to a strategy of how you're going to beat the opposition.
Mm-hmm. So regarding the phase of play, this is a question for the three of you. We can stay with you, Iain. I would ask you to pick a phase of play drill that you usually do and explain us why you do it.
I think counter-attacking possibly is something that I would do in a phase of play for realism with regards to the space available that's concerned. There's quite a few assets to counter-attacking as well, with regards to winning the ball back. So on the transition, and the pace in which you then counter, and you can with the phase of play there, you can either choose, do you coach the team that are defending the goal, or do you coach the team that are attacking the goal with a phase of play? So it depends on what your outcomes are going to be. Are you looking initially at the defensive part of the counter-attack, where you set your team up in a certain way, maybe in a low block, to defend deep and to win the ball back on the edge of the defending third, to then counter into space, into space beyond? Or do you counter towards the goal, so you're winning the ball back around about halfway line and then countering in towards the goal? So there's always those dilemmas and trade-offs, we call them, because you can never get the perfect balance all of the time. So there's going to be trade-offs somewhere along the line. But counter-attacking would be one that I would use as a phase of play.
Okay. What about you, Ignacio?
Well, let me say first of all that I agree with Pedro in this explanation about the small-sided games, but sometimes we have to, me as a coach and some other coaches, when we are younger, we create some mistake, and we discontextualize the small-sided games, and we put this farther than the phases of the game. Sometimes, imagine we have the model of the game. We want to create superiority when we build up the game. Okay, and it's very typical. A small-sided game, we play 5 versus 5, plus 2 neutrals or 1 neutrals that always have the ball, or always support the team who have the possession of the ball. So now in this exercise, we are giving the superiority to this team that has the possession of the ball, because now they play 6 versus 5. But when we are going to play the match, we want them to create the superiority. We don't have any neutrals, and we think, oh, we have worked this during the training session, and now we cannot create the superiority. Probably we forgot that we give them the superiority. So we have to be careful with these small-sided games, because I love them, but always when they are contextualized and when they allow us to work the specific part of the competition we want to achieve. And about the phases of the game, could you repeat the question, please, Rui?
It's like a challenge. I was asking our guests to talk about a drill that they usually do and why they do it in terms of phase of play.
Okay, to train this, I imagine.
Just an example.
Okay, so for example, if we want to practice a defensive situation, and when the ball is going to the opponents and the wingers, for example, I usually give them some rules to facilitate this context, and I like to train with some opposition and some inferiority, because I think that when we do this kind of exercise harder for the players, in my experience is that then in the competition they feel comfortable in these situations, they can solve them, and we also practice these cognitive aspects of solidarity, to be part of one team and to achieve this objective. Tactically, we can find some movement. Then we know all of these players have to work, because we were in an inferiority in these situations, and our main objective in this defensive task is obviously to defend our goal. So I think, or personally, I like to have an inferiority in these defensive situations, because during the competition, I think it could be better for all players. This could be an example of a phase of the game, and I usually like to practice like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Pedro, have your say on this, please.
I think working the phase of play is very, very important, and how you break down during the week, what you do when you do it, and to build the puzzle to the end of the week for the match. But as Iain mentioned, and Ignacio, I would like to mention one thing very important when we work on a phase of play. And as a coaching staff, we set the main objectives for that drill or for that session, or we're working on that phase of play. But it's very, very important to me, if I'm managing that practice, and let's say, like Iain said, like I'm working a counter-attack, and I'm coaching the team what to do when we win the ball in certain areas of the pitch, who is going to break the space in behind, etc. But it's very important, in my opinion, not forget the other guys, because as long you improving one phase of the play, we need to work the opposite phase of the play to keep pushing all the players to excel themselves on a session. Because if you just, as Ignacio mentioned, if you just said with the overload numbers on a small-sided games, if we create too much advantage in one specific phase of play, we may create a false sensation of success that will not be able to perform on a real match. Because as Ignacio mentioned, on the real match, we're not going to have numerical overload numbers unless we create with our dynamics, or the ref sends someone off. At the beginning of the game, we'll be 11v11. So we need to work, as he mentioned on the small side games, how to create dynamics to create overload. And when I work my face-off play, if I decided to work my defensive shape, my back 4 plus 2 or 1 midfielder, and I'm coaching them, but it's very important, someone on my coaching staff, to give feedbacks to the attacking players, how to keep giving problems to my back 4 in order to me to improve them, force them to play on their maximal levels, either cognitive side, even a physical side, give them a lot of problems, so we can keep pushing them and coach them to know how to face and fix all the problems and resolve all the problems that the game can give us to us. Because during the real match, it's not much we can do. We can always create the best sessions we can to coach them, and then expect them to make the right decision on the match. And we have most of the players take the same decision for the same moment in the same play of the match. So it's very important to me, work the balance. Yeah. So the main session is counter-attack. Okay, but the other guys, when we lose the ball, what we gonna do? We just simple stop. We don't press. We don't drop. How we want to do it? So it is important to me to keep working the both face of the play, not just the main one.
Okay.
Can I just say something there? Really, yeah. I can just 100% agree, and I think it's important that both teams have got a target to play to. So whether you're playing away from the goal or towards the goal, both teams have to have a target to play to. So, for example, if you're coaching a team that's playing towards the goal, so you're coaching an in-possession attacking topic, maybe, the opposition, the defender, the team defending the goal need to have a target to play to when they regain possession. In that way, the ball transitions naturally. So there's natural transition. So therefore, there's always a different situation. There's always a new situation that the team that regains the ball, whether it's coaching, attacking, or defending, has to deal with, has to solve, so that you get that what we call an ebb and flow to the session. So there always has to be that ebb and flow and a target for both teams, regardless which team that you're concentrating on predominantly.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about the tactical principles. For instance, Ignacio, what would be a good activity in order to teach players to use possession and set up penetration? Tell us your thoughts, please.
Instead of, sorry?
A good activity in training
yes.
in order to teach players to use possession and set up penetration.
Well, I think that a good activity in training to practice this have to take care of different aspects. For sure, that the players play in the positions or doing the functions or the roles they are going to be useful for them. For example, if my midfielders or my striker, my winger, they have to repeat situations in a space that must be familiar for them. And also the other aspects I wanted to say is that we have to create situations in which they have to make decisions for the team, but also in specific contexts that they are going to be very common during the competition. So if we make an exercise to work on specific principles of our model of game, or maybe a specific phases of the play, if we don't create the real, if we don't play in the real space, if we don't ask the player to solve situations that must be familiar for them during the competitions, I think this is an empty task. I call them empty task or empty exercises, because yeah, probably we are going to do an exercise of 20 minutes trying to attack with this specific principle of the game, but they are not going to solve situations that they are going to be repeated once and again during the competition. So we have to be very strict. You say that you strict with our principles, and we have to be clear with the players, because it's not the same function for all of them to obtain a great result. So the exercise must be contextualized, have to take care of these aspects I mentioned, and I think that some of them, of course, are going to be easier to achieve. Some of them could be difficult, but we have to have a good work line or work steps to obtain it.
Mm-hmm. Pedro, talking about the principles of attacking, are you in support of spreading your attack in the offense, the offensive part build up, in order to spread the other team's defense and create passing lanes, or is that a dangerous way to approach attack, since your players will be upfield and far from each other if you lose the ball?
To me, usually my last. Sorry, can you hear me?
No, I was just going to ask you, how do you prepare this moment of the game in training?
I prepare. I try to prepare, and the last 5 years I've been working with under 19s up, so more mature players, so they have better understanding of the game. And the way I'm trying to work with the players is when we try to play out the back or in any other areas of the pitch, try to understand that create simple rules, like if I'm facing my own goal with the ball, I need to play someone facing the opposition goal. So if I'm a number 6 deeper midfielder and I receive the ball with the center back, from the center back, and I have pressure behind me, I need to set the ball back. If I'm facing the opposition goal, I have to make a decision to make a more risky passes, because I can see everything in front of me. And then recognize if we have numerical advantage, so we have more players than the opposition team, so we keep playing on that area, we keep moving the ball and going forward on the pitch. If you don't have numerical advantage, so we have to come out of that area of the pitch and vary the attack. And if you recognize the team is for instance, the opposition team is pressing us very high on the pitch, and give an example, micro principles of the game. If we recognize the back four of the opposition team, they don't control the spacing behind them too well, so we set strategy to play along diagonal balls or direct balls in behind them. As I mentioned before, I'm not romantic in always have to play out the back. My concerns are giving tools to the players to understand how to hurt the opposition team in any way, because even in our academy system, we try to feed our players with as many tools as we can, because we are a selling club. We're not going to keep those players into our first team. We're going to sell them, and when they become 18, 19, 20 years old, they can be playing for Jurgen Klopp, who wants a very high intensity game, more physical game, comparing to Guardiola. Or they can be coached by Mourinho, who sits back and defend and just counter-attack. So they need to be prepared for everything. It's like going to school. When a kid goes to school, he learns all the topics, all the subjects, and then further on the line, he'll decide where he wants to go. If he wants to go for uni, what he wants to study. And in football, I think it's the same. We need to prepare our players, and now recently I've been working academy, for them to understand the game and be able to play any game. And then if I'm 2 meters tall and a strong lad, I might play a more physical game. If I'm tiny, I might be a different kind of game. But they need to understand the game, and that's the way. So I keep those simple rules. If you're facing forward, you'd make a decision, a more risky decision, and then recognize if you have a numerical advantage or we have advantage in a certain area of the pitch. So if I'm just at the other edge of the box, from the opposition box and no one is gonna give me no one delays me, I have to strike, I have to attack the box, I have to risk a final pass. So understand where they are and what is going around them is very important to me.
What about in the grassroots, Iain? When we talk about risky decisions or high-risk passes, there's always a different kind of mentality in the youngsters. They want to risk more, and it's harder to make them understand that they have to be conservative in the majority of the times and give it a go when the time is right. Do you promote high risk passes other than in the final third in your coaching work?
I think from a development point of view, and like I said, I've worked at grassroots. I work in the professional game now. I've worked with young players. I've worked with first team players, and I think particularly in development, it's about the coach's responsibility is to set the problem, not to solve the problem. The coach's responsibility is to challenge the player to make a decision. So for example, you would, depending on what the theme is, you would set a task that would ask players to solve a problem. You'd then observe the players on how they approach to solve that problem. And and mistakes would be a part of them solving the problem. And then you make a decision. So once you've observed how they process solving the problem, the coach then makes a decision as to how to help them solve the problem. Does the coach allow them to continue making the mistake because the coach feels as though at some stage that individual, knowing the individual would have the tools to be able to solve the problem eventually, so that when that individual solves a problem, it will be something that they never forget, and it becomes natural to them, that problem when it arises again, which it will, because it's a game of football. When it arises again, they'll be able to solve those problems naturally. It might be that the coach feels that the individual needs some help. So how the coach then decides to intervene, would it be intervening at that time to help the player because the coach feels as though that player needs that at that time? Would it be after in a one-to-one situation? Would it be in a group situation where the whole group needs the information? Or would it be the group, or getting the group to actually come up with the answers away from the sort of off-field coaching with the group? So again, it depends on the situation, depends on the individuals. As far as development's concerned, I think you've got to challenge your players enough so that they are going to make mistakes and allow them to have the freedom to solve those problems by making those mistakes independently. And you're there as a support mechanism to help them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Regarding the development of skills, no matter how good one player is at certain skills, there are always room for improvement. Speed training, for instance. Ignacio, in the off season, what kind of drills do you set up to make players faster and agile?
In the off season?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it depends on the of course on the players and the specific ability or skills, but I think it's very interesting to you mean when we don't have competition, isn't it?
Yeah, to prepare players for to change direction and be more prepared to develop some skills that can be developed.
Yeah, I think that creating me as a coach, creating the best context for these specific players or for this individual technique, ability, skills. And also I think it's very important for these players when we are off the season to make mistakes, because when we are coaching in an academy, for example, in my case, it's very interesting that the players make mistakes. Now we, as a coach, have the responsibility to give them the best feedback to create for them the best context to solve these situations. So now we don't have the pressure of the competition, we're off the season, as you told me. So we have to create context in which the players are going to have lots of time with the ball, lots of time related with a good atmosphere that help them to develop these skills, and of course trying to give them feedbacks where they're going to be comfortable with them. They are going to be conscious on what is happening during this season and how to develop them. But I think we have the responsibility to force them to make mistakes, to give them the best feedbacks, and to create for them the best context to improve these skills.
Pedro, in your experience, what would be the skill that is harder to improve in a player?
Technical skill, physical skill?
Have your say.
I think in a physical skill, I think speed is one of the hardest because there's a lot of genetical thing involved on it. However, I think the players, if they improve the knowledge of the game and the speed of thought, they can be quicker on the pitch without moving, because they can see things. They think
quicker. Yeah.
They think quicker. They decide faster, and above all, they decide well. And then on the flip side, on the tactical side, I would say for some players, what I feel when I have a very skillful player in Portugal, we have a lot of wingers. Everyone wants to be like Luís Figo, Cristiano Ronaldo, and they are very, very, very good on 1v1, but they don't have patience enough to understand the game. And sometimes just standing still, you don't move, is the best thing to do it. And receive the ball and pass the ball is the best thing to do. And it's very hard sometimes to teach these players, in my opinion, or the players I've been working recently, to make them to understand those, even they being so good in 1v1, sometimes going in 1v1 is not the best decision for the team, and even for them as individual, because they will look stupid for the guys looking from the stand, because what you can see is 1v1 with this attack defender, but behind this guy is another 3. And the best decision perhaps would be play the ball around or play 1-2. So sometimes I think the awareness of the game, the knowledge of the game is in a technical, tactical side is very hard to teach the players what to do and how to do it. Each skill to use, inside part of my right foot or my left foot, control or pass in one touch, hold the ball or move faster. So what decision to do? Sometimes they have the skill, but they do not know what skill to use and how to use it in certain moments of the game. So this is very hard, even with the players with a lot of technical skill, what to use for certain situation.
Is this also your experience, Iain, the awareness of the game being the most difficult skill to teach?
Yeah, without a doubt, it's the when and the where. Players will have different technical abilities. So you might get, as Pedro alluded to there, you might get a player that is good in 1v1 situations that can go past a player in a 1v1 situation. But when that player now is surrounded by 3 players, then the decision is, do I try to go past, or do I play the ball off and then and move into another space? And that's the difficulty is with young players, is to teach them, or it's not about teaching them, it's putting them in those kind of situations on a regular basis, so they're repeatedly experiencing those situations, so therefore their decision making in those situations improves. And that's the most difficult. So I suppose the answer to how you do it is to put them in those situations, in game type realistic situations, on a regular basis.
Your opinion on this, Ignacio?
Well, I agree with both of them, and I think that sometimes we have to give our players some experience to understand the game, to make the best decision for our team, but also for this specific situation, sometimes with small players or young ages, is more difficult than when we coach or we train player with 18, 19, 20, that probably if they have been a good process or they have had a good process, probably their understanding of the game could be better, and this they are conscious and able to put their own abilities for the needs of the team. So I think that, yeah, probably the best example is that one that Pedro said. You are very focused on the 1v1 because your ability is very, very good here, but behind this defender, we have another two opponents. So if you understand the game, probably you are not going to do this 1v1. You are going to pass the ball, to look to receive again the ball when when you have only one defender, one opponent, and if you have this 1v1 now, then you have the goal closer. So I think that this is very related with understanding the game, and of course I agree with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're heading towards the end of this part of the roundtable. Afterwards, we'll have a section of questions from our audience, which our guests will respond. Before that, I would just ask you to go for a roundup on the following question. What is your first non-negotiable feature for every training session design? This is the question for the three of you. Pedro, you can start.
Say again, sorry.
My question is, what is your first non-negotiable feature for every training session design?
For me to design?
Yeah. Something you always have there, no matter what.
Start on time, finish on time. That's the one. And then when I design a session, I have 3 rules actually. We start on time, we finish on time. The coach teach, the player learns, and when the coach is talking, no one kicks the ball. And then I try to, when write a training session, it's very, very important to me that one drill is linked to another as much as possible, and have the most if I have 90 minutes available time for my session, try to have at least 80 minutes of practice time. Less transitions as possible between one drill to another. Try to organize the groups, the teams at the beginning, and try not change too much. Obviously, sometimes you have to change here and there, but try to set up everything ahead, because those things will give you a lot of time of practice and available time for coaching. No dead times on a session. I think those things are very, very important to build a good session, and then set the right objectives, the right topics, the right practice to achieve, to tick those boxes, and never build a session, never design a session as one single moment. I'm missing the right expression for that. What I'm trying to say is, when I designed my Monday session, it should be linked to Tuesday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Thursday, Thursday to Friday, to build up to the game. It can't be something we just do today because I watch a drill on YouTube or watch something on TV, and then that might be a great drill, but might not be specific for my team and for what we're working. So build with a sequence towards the week, since day one.
Okay. Okay, Iain, what's your golden rule?
Realism.
Realism.
It's got to be realistic to the game, whether it's unopposed, opposed, whether it's a phase of play, whether it's a small-sided game, whether it's got to be realistic to the game. If you spend 30 minutes asking players to do things that they wouldn't be asked to do during the game, you've just wasted 30 minutes. So just make sure that anything that you plan, anything that's done within the practice is something that the players would be asked to do, tasks that they would be asked to solve, the problems that they'll be asked to solve during the game. Otherwise, you're wasting yours and their time.
Yeah, Ignacio?
Well, I have two rules that I don't negotiate with it. The first one is what my team needs now, or what my players need for this week, for this moment, for this specific exercise. And the second one, I told them many times that they can fail the pass, they can fail a goal, but they can commit mistake. And this probably could be good, but I don't negotiate with them the effort they have to have in each training exercise, in each training session, in each match. Independently, I play 90 minutes, I play 10 minutes. We don't negotiate the effort. And of course, I ask myself not what I want for the training session, but what my players need now, what my players need for this week.
Okay, so our first part of the discussion is done. Now we're going to clarify some doubts that our attendees have been showing in the chat during this roundtable. Let's start here with Georgia. The question goes to Pedro. Hello, everyone. Can you tell us about week periodization, how to build week planning if there is one game in a week?
Is that to me?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay, to me, so usually, well, let's say under 19s level, where I'm working at the moment, we play on Saturday most of the times, Sunday off. Monday we'll do recovery session for the players, secondary recovery session for the players that played. The other players have a quite high intensity session. And then this will be Monday. Tuesday will be a strength-based session where we work small-sided games and micro principles of our game model. Everyone will do that session. Wednesday we'll play, we'll work more endurance-specific drills, bigger areas, bigger numbers. Face-off play, a lot of coaching, but more base physical side will be more endurance one. On Thursday will be more speed session, and then all the drills aim for that physical side. Friday will be more regeneration session. We'll tick some boxes we feel we need to tick for the match, and then obviously Saturday will be a match day. And then as I mentioned, I try to when we work our offensive organization, we also work defensive organization. And the coaching staff are divided to provide feedbacks in both situations for all the players. One thing I try to do as well is very, very important, and nowadays is a very decisive moment of the game, is the set pieces, the dead balls. So yeah. I split them throughout the week according to the drills. So let me give an example. A typical drill we used to do later on the week, which is like a 3v2 in a small square. We set that square on a touch line, and the game starts with the throw-in. So we throw in the ball, and one team tries to keep the ball, other team needs to win the ball, and verity attack and go for a counter-attack, a transition. So we work that maybe on Thursday. But for instance, on a Wednesday where we work bigger numbers, bigger pitch, I'll work my corner kicks, my free kicks, and all the game will start with a corner kick, for instance, or 2 corner kicks, and then because I don't believe doing set pieces at the end of the week without opposition, just talking to the players, and then some players, they know already they're not going to play, they're not motivated to play. And then again, sometimes we have players that are always keen to work, and those situations is very physical demand. Sometimes someone had someone's head, and then you have an injury 20 hours before the match, and you don't have time to recover. So as we talked today, sometimes on Friday, day before the match, I use a little bit unopposed drills more than any other day of the week, because I want to save players to be injury. So I split that. I split the set pieces throughout the week, and then I'll do micro principles on Tuesday, macro principles on Wednesday, micro and macro on Thursday. On Friday, I'll tick the boxes I feel we need to be ticked to the match. More demanding physically and more demanding in the way we talk to the players on Tuesday, more coachable on Wednesday, and more motivational speech on Thursday and Friday towards the match. That's more or less the way I build up the week.
Okay, great. Another question from Ruben Cruz. How do you classify the term high-risk task and risky decision? Is this related to position on the pitch by a player or just a term in general? Iain, please.
I think it's a situation that you're in. Is it linked to? I suppose it depends on whether it's performance related or it's development related. I think a risky pass might be that if you're in your own penalty area, as lots of phases of play develop now through that, and you're trying to play between two forwards, maybe that might be deemed some way as a risk, whereas in the opposition's penalty area and you're trying to play between two defenders and you're a forward, that might not be deemed as so much of a risk. So I suppose it depends on the context. It's a difficult one, because I think from a development point of view, you need to put your players in those situations where they're going to have to take risks, because risk is part of the game. When you get to more of a performance level, you're hoping that your players will take less risks, because it could lead to your termination of your contract if you're losing games of football. So it depends on the context. I'm not sure there's a definitive answer to that, because I think it needs to be contextual. So yeah, sorry, I'm not sure whether I answered that very well at all, but it could be related. It could be related to where you are on the pitch. It could be just depending on what phase of development you're in. I think that if you're working with young players, it's good to put them into situations where they're going to have to take risks, because they have to learn to deal with those problems that come with taking risks. If you're in a performance end and it's going to cost you your job, you don't want your players to be taking too many risks. So that's the balance.
Okay, so the next question goes for Ignacio from Lilk. Good question. Collectively, this discussion has raised awareness to how important decision-making and problem-solving skills are. From this, how can we model a practice that focuses on in-game tactical transitions, as in plan A to plan B in gamesmanship planning?
Well, I think this is a very interesting question, and I think on two ways to work on this. First of all, when we train, for example, we play a modified match during the training session, we can be focused on one team to obtain some or to achieve some objectives, as here you say plan A, and the other team is going to work on the plan. Why? Because when we are going to compete, we are only one team. So if we, during the training sessions, are able to work using plan A and plan B, then we change our players, and all of our players have to face these two situations, plan A and plan B. Probably in the competitions, they are going to be familiarized with this. The second way, I think this could be interesting to work on this, is to add for this exercise or this rule, for example, this modified match I told you, we're going to add some rules that make the players change from plan A to plan B. How? Or for example, if we start the game and we play a 7 versus 7 plus 2 neutrals, okay? And now if my team is winning 1-0, now we have to solve these situations in a different way. We are going to practice on plan B, and the other team who is losing 1-0 has to continue with plan A. If we draw, now we change the rules. When we are draw, we play as we usually do in our game model. If we win or if we are losing in this modified match during the training sessions, we have to change. For example, we play with 3 center backs, now we play with 2 because we are losing. And these could be rules that we introduce, and now the players have to decide when they are going to practice with these rules or with these tools we gave them. So that could be an interesting way to practice these transitions to plan A to plan B.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question would be for Pedro. It's probably a situation that every coach faces sometimes in his career, at least once. How can we offer players similar matches situations in the training time when most of the time the part of the pitch we have is very small? Question from Melchor Roman. Pedro, please.
I didn't get the last part of the question, sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to say it again. How can we offer players similar match situations in training time when most of the time the part of the pitch we have is very small?
I think everyone is facing that, and that's why we make magic.
Magicians, not coach.
Well, so one thing I manage to do on the team I'm coaching is finding friendlies, midweek friendlies, and talk to, like playing with first team lower divisions in Algarve, where we based, and choose specific opponents that we know they're going to give us different problems. So if I want to work my defensive organization, I would invite or ask for a friendly to a team that is a lot stronger than me, that would put me to play on my defensive half, or the other way around. So this is one way I create, and I made a decision to create that, during that friendly, to give those problems to the players and then coach them during and after. When that is not possible, is I think, like Ignacio was saying, is create scenarios on the pitch more specific as possible with the area available we have. I believe most of us at least have one half of the pitch, and then saying, oh, guys, at the moment now we working our defensive half, and this is the principles we want to put in place. The scenarios are like this happened in that match and that match or the other match, so we work on this, create the scenarios, bring memories to them, things we faced before, and try to coach them according to that, and then say, now we're working on our offensive half, and we work these principles now. But if you tell me that we need to work how to control the spacing behind the back four, and we only have one half to work, is very, very hard, we have to say, because we don't have a lot of space to deny or to close. So that's why I say we make magic. We need to find drills. It's very hard. It goes with the imagination we have. It goes with the quality of the players we have. One thing for sure is that won't be excuse for us to not do our work properly, because all of us here have the same problem. And when we say that, oh, I don't have space to work, so don't blame me for the results, or don't blame me for not developing players, they'll say that's very poor attitude, because all of us will be in the same situation, and some of us will develop players and some will don't. So that's not an excuse for not doing the work.
Okay. Next question from Vangelis Lolis. A question in an idea. I would like Iain to comment on this. Hello, guys. You talked about awareness of the game and the importance of players understanding the game. How do you achieve that, especially with young players, 15, 17 years old? This is the idea of a possible solution. I have thought about adding half an hour after each training session to talk to them about how I want them to play and listen to their opinion, so we can create a better understanding in the relation player coaching staff and player. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, definitely always good to have that rapport with your players where you need to check their understanding. A way of checking their understanding is talking to them, asking them questions, open questions, so that you're eliciting a response from them that's more than just one word, yes or no. So you need to talk to your players, and you need your players to talk to you. So there's got to be a two-way open conversation going on. So from that point of view, as far as helping your players understand what you're asking them to do, and you understanding what they understand of what you want them to do, okay, there's got to be that two-way open conversation, so we both know. As far as players learning to understand the game, and it's been a theme right the way through this chat, and quite rightly so, is put them in situations that they're going to be playing in during the game, because that's the way they are going to understand it. They're actually in the situation, they've got the problem that they're going to have to solve in the game. So if you want them to play a certain way, you have a certain strategy, put them in situations that's going to force them into having to adopt that strategy. Mm-hmm. And that can be achieved, through using, we call it STEP. So you can manipulate the space, you can manipulate the task, you can manipulate the equipment, and manipulate the players to get those outcomes. Mm-hmm. So it's an acronym of STEP that you can use, and it's quite simple. Everything you do will be related, and it will always come back to STEP. And you change those four things, you change the outcome, or you don't change the outcome, but you have an impact on the outcome.
Very well. Last question. It was about something that Pedro said about Portuguese wingers, but I'm going to ask Ignacio to have his view on this, to have the Spanish experience, if he has something similar to say about the wingers or another position. Hello, guys. Regarding what Pedro spoke about Portuguese young wingers and their misunderstood of the game when to go one-on-one instead of passing or making two-on-one, which type of exercises can we do in training sessions in order to improve this skill?
Well, I would say that here, more than the type of exercise, is more interesting not only that the player understands the game, but that the players recognize themselves in the game. And it means that they recognize themselves in our principles, in our model, because it's not the same to play football for one team than for our team if we have specific principles and we have a specific model. Here you can use analytical exercise, small-sided game, large-sided game, modified match. It depends on what we want to achieve. In these specific situations, for example, if you do a modified match and you start with some rules that create these specific situations, for example, this 2 versus 1, you can introduce the rule that in a modified match, 8 against 8, plus 2 goalkeepers, when the ball goes to the wing, always we have to create a superiority. Probably this is your rule as a coach, and the players, when the ball is on the wing, here they are going to create a 2 versus 1 on this wing, because you said we have to create the superiority. This is the first step. Now, when they start to be familiarized with these situations, and obviously in the competitions, when the ball is going to be on the winger, for like an automatism, they are going to create a superiority because we have training on that. This is obviously the first step of a process, But we don't only want to achieve that the players recognize these situations. So I have 1 versus 1, and now my coach said we have to create a superiority. So now they're going to identify this specific situation on the wing, for example, in other part or spaces of